In Invisible No More, Olivia Bennett, an undercover FBI agent, infiltrates GlobalTech as a low-level security consultant to investigate alarming security breaches. As she uncovers a sinister plot involving high-ranking executives and corporate espionage, Olivia grapples with a toxic workplace culture steeped in racial bias. With her integrity and safety on the line, she must race against time to expose the truth and protect herself from becoming the ultimate scapegoat. Will her quiet strength and determination be enough to bring justice to a corrupt system, or will she remain invisible forever? Before we get started, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more exciting content, and let us know where you're watching from in the comments. Now let's dive in. Olivia Bennett had spent years perfecting the art of being invisible. As an undercover FBI agent, blending into her surroundings was not just a skill, it was a necessity. She'd been assigned to infiltrate GlobalTech, a massive multinational tech corporation, where she would pose as a low-level security consultant. Her mission was clear: investigate potential security breaches that had raised red flags with the FBI. What wasn't clear, however, was just how deep the rot within the company ran. From the moment she stepped into GlobalTech's sprawling headquarters, Olivia could feel the weight of assumptions pressing down on her. She had known the road would be difficult. She had faced discrimination in previous assignments, but something about GlobalTech made it worse. It wasn't just that she was one of the few women of color in a male-dominated environment. It was the way her colleagues dismissed her without even trying to know her. The glances, the whispers, the assumptions, they were all there. Her role as a security consultant was deliberately low-key. Olivia needed to operate under the radar, unnoticed by the very people she was tasked with observing. And for the most part, it worked. The other consultants barely gave her a second thought, assuming she wasn't important enough to warrant attention. The leadership, especially the head of security, Mr. Daniels, seemed to forget her existence altogether. Mr. Daniels was a man who exuded arrogance. His confident swagger and dismissive attitude toward anyone he deemed unworthy made him a difficult man to work under. To him, Olivia was just another diversity hire, a box to be ticked for the sake of corporate image. He never missed an opportunity to undermine her, though always with a smile. It was the kind of passive prejudice that couldn't be called out directly but was felt in every interaction. As Olivia settled into her role, she began to notice patterns, small, subtle things that most would overlook. Security protocols being bypassed without alarm, encrypted communications between certain executives, and missing data that no one seemed to notice. It was clear that something was wrong, but the challenge was proving it. She had to tread carefully. One wrong move, one piece of evidence out of place, and her entire cover would be blown. Her initial observations led her to focus on three key figures within GlobalTech's leadership: Thomas Grant, the head of research and development; Lisa Huxley, the head of operations; and Raymond Caldwell, the company's chief financial officer. Each of them had access to sensitive company data, and all of them had exhibited strange behaviors in the last few months. Late-night meetings, unauthorized access to secure systems, and transactions that didn't align with their official duties. But without concrete proof, Olivia knew she would face nothing but skepticism. Enter Liam Marshall, a senior security analyst who had worked at GlobalTech for several years. He was good at his job, well-liked by his peers, and comfortable in his position. Liam was the type of person who believed he had GlobalTech figured out. He'd risen through the ranks, made connections with the right people, and had no reason to doubt the integrity of the company he worked for. When he first met Olivia, he didn't see her as a threat or even as a potential ally, just another face in the background. Their initial interactions were strained. Liam was polite but distant. He didn't bother getting to know Olivia beyond the surface. It wasn't that he actively disliked her, but there was a part of him that had internalized the office gossip. Olivia was the new hire, someone who probably wouldn't last long. He wasn't overtly hostile, but he didn't take her seriously either. He never gave her the chance to prove herself. However, Olivia wasn't here to make friends. She kept her head down, focused on the task at hand, and methodically documented everything she found. She stayed late at the office, poring over security logs, monitoring the digital traffic, and quietly following the key players. Every night, the picture became clearer, a web of deceit, corruption, and possibly treason. The deeper she dug, the more dangerous the situation became. But with each new revelation, Olivia felt more isolated. One evening, Olivia stumbled upon something that sent her heart racing. While sifting through a series of encrypted emails, she discovered a meeting planned between Grant and an unknown party. The location was remote, the time late, and the content of the communication was suspiciously vague. It didn't take much for Olivia to realize this could be the break she needed. This was no ordinary meeting. This was the handoff of stolen corporate secrets. She needed proof, and fast. But when she tried to bring it up to her immediate superior, Mr. Daniels, she was met with condescension. "I'm sure it's nothing, Bennett. You're reading too much into it," he said, his tone dripping with patronization. It wasn't the first time he had dismissed her concerns, but this one stung more than usual. Olivia knew she was onto something, and yet no one was willing to listen. Frustrated but undeterred, Olivia realized she would need to take matters into her own hands. She couldn't rely on the company's leadership, and even her FBI handlers were cautious, advising her to wait for more substantial evidence. But Olivia didn't have time to wait. If this meeting went as planned, it could mean catastrophic consequences, not just for GlobalTech, but for national security. So, Olivia made a choice. She would attend the meeting herself, in secret. She would be the silent observer, as she had always been, watching, waiting, and ready to act when the time was right. What Olivia didn't expect, however, was that Liam Marshall would start noticing her. He began paying attention to the small things, the way Olivia stayed late, the way she asked the right questions without drawing attention to herself. He didn't understand what she was up to, but he was curious. And curiosity, as Olivia would soon find out, could be her greatest ally or her biggest threat. Olivia sat in her tiny cubicle, surrounded by walls that felt as confining as her role at GlobalTech. Despite her qualifications and years of experience, she was nothing more than a footnote in the company. A security consultant whose suggestions were often dismissed before they were even fully heard. But what her colleagues failed to realize was that being underestimated was Olivia's greatest weapon. For weeks now, she had been meticulously gathering evidence, piecing together the puzzle of corporate espionage, happening right under everyone's noses. The company's internal security systems showed signs of subtle breaches, small, seemingly insignificant intrusions that others had overlooked. Files disappearing and reappearing, encrypted communications that didn't quite add up, and odd patterns of access to sensitive information. Olivia had seen it all before in other investigations. What made this case different was the level of internal corruption she suspected was at play. One night, after most of the office had cleared out, Olivia stayed late to continue her work. She had grown used to the silence of the empty office, used to the way the hum of the computers and the distant echo of footsteps became her only companions. As she sifted through more security logs, her eyes caught a new anomaly, an unauthorized system bypass in the research and development department. The access seemed to be coming from one of the company's most trusted executives, Thomas Grant. Grant was known for being brilliant, ruthless, and secretive, but no one had ever questioned his loyalty to the company. To everyone else, he was untouchable, beyond suspicion. But Olivia's instincts told her otherwise. She followed the trail deeper, hacking into his encrypted emails, an act that wasn't part of her job description, but necessary if she was going to figure out the truth. What she found sent a chill down her spine: communications between Grant and an unknown external entity, heavily encrypted but just legible enough for Olivia to decipher. They were discussing sensitive company information, including technology patents that hadn't even been released yet. It was clear now, Grant was leaking information. But he wasn't acting alone. The emails hinted at more than just corporate theft. They suggested something larger, something that went beyond simple greed. Olivia suspected there was an external organization involved, perhaps even a competitor or a foreign entity. But without more concrete evidence, she couldn't prove it. And she couldn't rely on her superiors to believe her without hard proof. Despite the gravity of the situation, Olivia knew she had to play it cool. She needed time to gather more information, but she also needed an ally. That was when her thoughts drifted to Liam Marshall. Liam had been more observant of her lately, though she couldn't quite figure out why. He had begun asking her casual questions about her background, her thoughts on security breaches, even her personal interests. At first, Olivia thought he was just being nosy, maybe even skeptical of her abilities. But over the past few days, his demeanor had shifted. It was subtle, but she could feel his growing curiosity about her work. One evening, when the office was nearly empty, Liam approached her desk. "You're always here late," he said, leaning casually against the wall of her cubicle. "What are you working on that's so important?" Olivia glanced up from her screen, debating how much to tell him. Liam was popular among the team, respected for his knowledge and insight, but Olivia wasn't sure if she could trust him yet. "Just some security protocols," she said vaguely, though she could tell by the look in his eyes that he wasn't buying it. "Right?" he said, crossing his arms. "But I'm pretty sure I saw you poking around the research and development access logs earlier today. Doesn't seem like standard protocol work to me." Olivia felt her pulse quicken. She had been careful not to draw attention to her investigation, but clearly Liam had noticed more than she realized. "You seem awfully interested in my work," she replied, trying to keep her tone light. Liam shrugged. "Just curious. You've been here for a while now, and I feel like no one really knows what you're up to. And yet, you seem to know a lot about what's going on around here." Olivia leaned back in her chair, studying him carefully. He wasn't accusing her of anything, but there was an edge to his curiosity that made her wary. She needed to decide whether to let him in or push him away. After a moment, she made her choice. "I'll be honest with you, Liam," she said quietly. "There's something going on at this company. Something big. I've been following some leads, and I think I'm on the verge of uncovering a major security breach." Liam raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "A breach? Who's involved?" Olivia hesitated. "I don't have all the answers yet, but I suspect one of the top executives, Thomas Grant, is behind it. I found encrypted emails that suggest he's leaking sensitive information to an outside party." Liam's expression shifted, skepticism giving way to concern. "Grant? Are you sure?" "I'm not sure of anything yet," Olivia admitted. "That's why I haven't brought it up to anyone else. I don't have enough proof, and frankly, I don't think anyone here would believe me even if I did." Liam frowned, clearly conflicted. "Why wouldn't they believe you? If you have the evidence." Olivia met his gaze, her eyes steady. "Because I'm not exactly someone they take seriously around here." Liam didn't argue. He knew exactly what she meant. The company's culture was deeply rooted in its biases. People like Mr. Daniels and other executives dismissed anyone who didn't fit into their narrow view of what competence looked like. And Olivia, being a quiet, unassuming woman of color, had been ignored from day one. Liam had been guilty of it himself, though he hadn't realized it until now. "So what are you going to do?" Liam asked after a moment of silence. "I'm going to keep digging," Olivia said firmly. "And I could use your help." Liam studied her for a moment, then nodded slowly. "All right. I'm in." From that night forward, Liam and Olivia became secret allies. Together, they continued investigating Grant and his accomplices, piecing together the intricate web of lies and deceit that had taken root within GlobalTech. Liam used his access to internal systems to gather additional information, while Olivia followed the trail of encrypted emails and suspicious financial transactions. As their investigation deepened, Liam began to realize just how pervasive the company's culture of prejudice really was. He saw firsthand how Olivia's insights were routinely ignored, how her contributions were belittled, and how people like Mr. Daniels perpetuated an environment of quiet discrimination. It was eye-opening for Liam, who had always believed himself to be fair-minded and unbiased. But now, he couldn't deny that he had been complicit in the company's toxic culture by simply going along with it. The more time he spent with Olivia, the more Liam began to question everything he thought he knew about his colleagues and the company he worked for. He found himself admiring Olivia's determination, her ability to see what others missed, and her refusal to be silenced despite the barriers she faced. She was not just a consultant, she was someone who truly cared about justice, about doing the right thing, even when it seemed impossible. Their partnership grew stronger as they uncovered more layers of the conspiracy, but they also knew they were walking a dangerous line. The more they uncovered, the more they realized that the stakes were higher than they had ever imagined. And while Olivia was prepared to face whatever came next, Liam wasn't sure if he was ready for the storm that was about to break. The partnership between Olivia and Liam was an unexpected one, but it worked. Liam found himself more drawn into the investigation with every passing day, not just because of the mystery that surrounded the potential corporate espionage, but because of Olivia herself. She was unlike anyone he had worked with before, sharp, intuitive, and fiercely determined. Despite the company's relentless prejudice, she never let the disrespect of her colleagues break her spirit. Liam, on the other hand, was beginning to realize just how much he had overlooked. He had been part of the system that dismissed Olivia and people like her without a second thought, and the realization gnawed at him. He had always considered himself to be open-minded, even progressive, but working alongside Olivia exposed how much he had unconsciously bought into the same biases as everyone else. It was a humbling experience, one that forced him to reevaluate not just his views of Olivia, but of the entire company culture. As Olivia continued to dig deeper into the encrypted emails and secret communications between Thomas Grant and outside entities, Liam used his position to assist her. Together, they uncovered more disturbing evidence that confirmed Olivia's initial suspicions. Grant was not just selling company secrets. He was actively colluding with a competitor to sabotage GlobalTech's latest project. The competitor, operating under the guise of a third-party contractor, was slowly siphoning off critical research and development data that would cripple GlobalTech's next-generation technology. This revelation sent a wave of urgency through both Olivia and Liam. The consequences of this betrayal weren't just limited to corporate profit margins. If Grant succeeded in passing off the stolen technology to this competitor, it could have wide-reaching implications for the industry at large and even the economy. But with every piece of evidence they gathered, Olivia grew more cautious. They were walking a tightrope. If Grant or his accomplices realized they were being watched, they could destroy the evidence before Olivia had a chance to bring it to the authorities. One evening, after a particularly long day, Liam invited Olivia out for a drink. She was hesitant at first, unsure of whether to keep their working relationship strictly professional. But she agreed. They found a quiet spot in a dimly lit bar near the office. It was one of those places where the air was thick with the scent of old wood and conversations could remain private. As they sat across from each other, nursing their drinks, a sense of camaraderie settled between them. "So, what made you want to work for the FBI?" Liam asked, breaking the silence. Olivia stared into her glass for a moment before responding. "I grew up in a rough neighborhood. My family, we weren't exactly rolling in money. I watched a lot of people I cared about fall victim to the system, to prejudice, to everything stacked against them. I knew I couldn't change everything, but I wanted to make a difference. I thought law enforcement was the way to do that. And has it been?" Liam asked, genuinely curious. "It's complicated," Olivia replied, a bitter smile playing on her lips. "The system isn't perfect. Sometimes it feels like no matter how hard you fight, the biases run too deep. I've been underestimated, overlooked, and sidelined more times than I can count. But there are small victories. People you help, cases you solve, that's what keeps me going." Liam nodded, taking in her words. He had never thought about the world from her perspective. He had grown up in a comfortable, middle-class family, went to good schools, and never faced the kind of systemic obstacles Olivia had. It wasn't that he didn't care about injustice, it was that he had never really had to think about it before. Now it was staring him in the face, and he couldn't ignore it. "Do you ever get tired of fighting?" Liam asked quietly. "All the time," Olivia said, her voice soft. "But I don't really have a choice. If I don't fight, who will?" Liam let her words sink in. He realized that he had the luxury of opting out, of walking away from uncomfortable situations. But for Olivia, this was her reality every day. He felt a growing respect for her, not just for her skills as an investigator, but for her strength as a person. They sat in silence for a few minutes before Liam spoke again. "I'm sorry." Olivia looked at him puzzled. For what? For everything, Liam said, struggling to find the right words. I didn't realize how much I've been part of the problem. I dismissed you when you first got here. I believed the gossip, the assumptions, and now I see that I was wrong. Olivia didn't say anything for a moment, her expression unreadable. Finally she spoke, her tone calm. I appreciate the apology, Liam, but it's not just about you. This whole company, this whole system, it's built on assumptions and biases. People like me, we have to work twice as hard to prove ourselves. And even then, it's not always enough. Liam nodded, understanding. But you've proved yourself to me. I see what you're capable of, and I'm going to make sure others see it too. Olivia smiled, a real smile this time, though there was a hint of sadness in her eyes. Thank you. But I've learned not to wait for other people's validation. I know what I'm worth, and that's what matters. Their conversation that night solidified the bond between them. Liam wasn't just an ally in the investigation anymore. He was someone who understood, someone who had started to see the world through a different lens. It was a small but significant shift, and it made Olivia feel just a little less alone in her fight. Over the next few weeks, their investigation picked up speed. Olivia and Liam discovered that Grant's plot was more intricate than they had imagined. He wasn't just working alone. There were others in the company helping him, some knowingly, some unknowingly. The scale of the operation was massive, and it involved more than just corporate espionage. It seemed that certain executives were using their positions to manipulate the stock market, leaking information to affect share prices, and then profiting off the fallout. The complexity of the scheme made it difficult to know who to trust. Olivia and Liam were operating in the shadows, careful not to draw attention to themselves. They had already seen how quickly GlobalTech's leadership dismissed concerns, especially coming from someone like Olivia. If they revealed their findings too soon, without airtight evidence, they would be discredited, and the conspirators would cover their tracks. One afternoon, as they worked late in the office, Liam turned to Olivia with a serious expression. What happens when we expose this? I mean, it's not just Grant, it's bigger than that. This could bring down some of the most powerful people in the company. Olivia sighed, rubbing her temples. I know, and that's what makes it so dangerous. These people aren't just going to roll over and accept defeat. They'll fight back. They'll try to bury us along with the evidence. Liam frowned. So what do? We keep going, Olivia said firmly. We gather everything we can, and when the time is right, we hit them with everything we've got. But we have to be careful. We can't afford any mistakes. Liam nodded, though the weight of what they were doing was starting to sink in. This wasn't just about catching a few corrupt executives. This was about exposing an entire culture of corruption and deceit. And as much as he respected Olivia's resolve, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into something much bigger than either of them had anticipated. As the days passed, the pressure mounted. Olivia and Liam were getting closer to the truth, but they could feel the walls closing in. The more they uncovered, the more dangerous their situation became. And while they had each other, they both knew that the fight ahead was going to be the toughest one yet. Olivia's every move was careful now, calculated, as if she were navigating a minefield. The deeper she and Liam got into the investigation, the more Olivia felt the invisible eyes watching her. The tension at GlobalTech had reached a boiling point. She could feel it in the way her colleagues glanced at her when they thought she wasn't looking, in the way certain conversations abruptly stopped when she entered a room. Someone knew, or at the very least, someone was suspicious. It didn't help that Olivia and Liam had begun closing in on the heart of the conspiracy. They had gathered enough evidence to connect Thomas Grant not just to corporate espionage, but to a web of illegal activities stretching across departments: embezzlement, fraud, and insider trading. What had started as a hunch about stolen technology had grown into a much larger operation, with multiple players, some of whom were higher up in the company than Olivia had initially anticipated. Despite the mounting pressure, Olivia remained calm on the outside. It was what she had been trained to do. But inside, she knew she was nearing the breaking point. There was only so much time left before Grant and his accomplices realized just how much she and Liam had uncovered. And when that happened, Olivia knew they would stop at nothing to silence her. One afternoon, Olivia received an unexpected email from Mr. Daniels, the head of security. He had scheduled an impromptu meeting with her in his office. Olivia felt a knot tighten in her stomach. Mr. Daniels had never once taken her seriously, dismissing her concerns at every turn, and now he suddenly wanted to talk? The timing felt too convenient. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. As Olivia approached Mr. Daniels' office, she noticed Liam standing by the elevators, watching her with a concerned expression. He had overheard about the meeting and had a bad feeling too. She gave him a reassuring nod, though her heart was pounding. She had to be ready for anything. Inside the office, Mr. Daniels was seated behind his desk, his usual smug demeanor in full force. "Bennett, sit down," he said, gesturing to the chair opposite him. Olivia took a seat, her posture straight, her eyes steady. She wasn't about to let him intimidate her. "I've been hearing some concerning things about your recent activities," Mr. Daniels began, leaning back in his chair. His tone was casual, but Olivia could sense the undercurrent of threat. "You've been digging around in areas that don't concern you. Research and development, encrypted files, unauthorized access to security logs. Care to explain yourself?" Olivia's mind raced. She had been careful, meticulous, and yet somehow Daniels knew. He had either been tipped off by Grant or had been watching her closely all along, but she couldn't let him see her panic. "I'm just doing my job," Olivia replied coolly. "I'm a security consultant. It's my responsibility to investigate potential threats to the company." Daniel's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Is that so? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're sticking your nose where it doesn't belong. You've been warned before, Bennett. You should know better than to cross certain lines." Olivia felt her pulse quicken, but she didn't let it show. "If you're referring to my investigation into the security breaches, then I would think you'd be grateful that someone is actually doing their job around here." Daniel's expression darkened. "Careful, Bennett. You're playing a dangerous game. You're new here, so maybe you don't understand how things work. But let me make it clear. Some people in this company are untouchable. And if you keep pushing, you're going to find yourself on the wrong side of this." Olivia knew exactly what he was implying. Grant and the others weren't just powerful, they were protected. The corruption ran deeper than she had realized, and Daniels was part of it. He was warning her, but Olivia could hear the threat loud and clear. But she wasn't about to back down. "I appreciate your concern, Mr. Daniels," Olivia said, her voice steady, "but I'm not the kind of person who turns a blind eye to wrongdoing. If there's a problem in this company, I intend to find it and expose it." For a moment, Daniels said nothing, his eyes narrowing as he studied her. Then, with a slow, deliberate smile, he leaned forward, his hands resting on the desk. "I've seen people like you come and go, Bennett. Idealists, people who think they can change the system. But let me give you some advice. The system is bigger than you, and it will chew you up and spit you out if you don't know when to back off." Olivia didn't flinch. "We'll see about that." Daniels chuckled darkly, shaking his head. "Suit yourself, but don't say I didn't warn you." As Olivia left his office, her heart was pounding. But her resolve had never been stronger. Daniels was scared, and that meant she was getting close. But it also meant the stakes had just been raised. She needed to act fast before they tried to shut her down for good. Later that night, Olivia met with Liam in one of the quiet, unused conference rooms. The tension between them was palpable, both of them aware that time was running out. Olivia relayed her conversation with Daniels, and Liam's face grew grim. "This is bad, Olivia," he said, pacing the room. "If Daniels is in on it, then this goes way deeper than we thought. They're going to come after you." "I know," Olivia said, her voice calm despite the anxiety gnawing at her insides. "But we're close, Liam. We've almost got enough evidence to take this to the FBI. We just need one more piece to connect all the dots." Liam nodded, though the worry in his eyes was clear. "We have to be smart about this. If they catch wind of what we're about to do, they'll destroy the evidence. We need to move carefully." Olivia agreed, but deep down, she knew that the careful approach was no longer an option. Daniel's veiled threats had made it clear. They were already onto her. The time for caution had passed. Now, it was about survival. Over the next few days, Olivia and Liam worked in secret, gathering the final pieces of evidence they needed. Every night after the office emptied out, they pored over files, tracking the flow of money, the encrypted communications, and the movements of key players in the conspiracy. They found evidence of secret offshore accounts, payments made to third-party contractors, and meetings held off company grounds. It was all there, a tangled web of corruption that led back to Grant, Daniels, and several other high-ranking executives. But just as they were on the verge of completing their case, disaster struck. One morning, as Olivia logged into the system, she noticed something strange. Her access to the security logs had been revoked. Every trace of her previous work had been erased, as if she had never even been there. Her heart sank. Someone had found out about her investigation, and they were scrubbing the evidence. Panic surged through her, but she forced herself to stay calm. She quickly messaged Liam, who confirmed that his access had been restricted as well. They were being locked out of the very system they had been using to gather evidence. It was a clear sign that Grant and Daniels knew they were close to being exposed. "We need to get out of here," Liam said, his voice urgent as they met in a secluded corner of the office. "They're going to shut us down. We have to go to the FBI now with what we have." Olivia nodded, her mind racing. They had no choice now. It was time to blow the whistle, even if their evidence wasn't as airtight as they had hoped. It was now or never. Just as they were about to leave the building, Olivia's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and froze. It was an anonymous text message, the kind that made her blood run cold. "We know what you've been up to. Stop now, or you'll regret it." Olivia showed the message to Liam, her hands trembling. "They're threatening us." Liam's face was pale, but his resolve was firm. "We can't stop now. We've come too far." With that, Olivia and Liam made their way out of the building, adrenaline pumping through their veins. They knew they were walking into dangerous territory, but there was no turning back. As they approached the FBI field office, Olivia couldn't help but think about all the people who had underestimated her, dismissed her, and tried to silence her. She had come this far by refusing to let them define her, and she wasn't about to give up now. No matter how deep the corruption ran, no matter how many obstacles stood in her way, she would fight to expose the truth. The city felt different as Olivia and Liam made their way to the FBI field office, its usual hum of activity overshadowed by the weight of the secrets they carried. Olivia's mind raced as they neared their destination, every step feeling heavier than the last. She couldn't shake the sense that their every move was being watched, that somewhere Thomas Grant and Mr. Daniels were already plotting their next move. Liam remained quiet beside her, his face tense and drawn. Olivia knew he was scared. She was too. But beneath that fear was a determination that had carried her through countless cases, a deep belief in justice that wouldn't let her back down, no matter the cost. Liam had come a long way since their first meeting, his casual indifference toward her transforming into a fierce loyalty. They were in this together now, bound not just by their investigation, but by their shared fight against a system that had long been corrupted from the inside out. As they entered the FBI office, Olivia's heart pounded in her chest. They had reached the point of no return. The agent they met with was serious, professional, and slightly skeptical. Olivia had expected this. Even within her own agency, there were those who would be hesitant to take action against a corporation as powerful as GlobalTech, especially with the involvement of high-ranking executives like Grant. But Olivia was prepared for the skepticism. She and Liam laid out their findings meticulously, showing the encrypted emails, the financial records, and the evidence of offshore accounts. "This is substantial," the agent said, flipping through the documents. "But it's still circumstantial. Do you have anything that directly ties Grant or Daniels to illegal activity?" Olivia's stomach tightened. They had come so far, but the evidence wasn't as solid as she had hoped. They had uncovered layers of corruption, but they were still missing that smoking gun. She glanced at Liam, whose expression mirrored her own frustration. They had enough to raise serious suspicions. But would it be enough to bring down someone as untouchable as Grant? "I know this isn't everything," Olivia admitted. But if we wait any longer, they're going to destroy what evidence we do have. They've already started scrubbing the systems, erasing logs and revoking access. We need to move now, or we'll lose everything. The agent sighed, his brow furrowing. He was clearly conflicted, weighing the risk of launching an investigation without concrete proof against the potential consequences of letting GlobalTech's corruption continue unchecked. I'll escalate this, the agent finally said, rising from his desk. But we need to move quickly and carefully. If what you're saying is true, this is much bigger than we thought. I'll start the process for an internal investigation, but you need to keep your heads down for now. Don't give them any reason to suspect you've come to us. Olivia nodded, though the tension in her chest remained. They were so close, but it wasn't over yet. As she and Liam left the FBI office, the weight of what they had just done hit her all at once. They had taken the first step toward exposing GlobalTech's corruption, but they were still in the lion's den. Grant and Daniels were powerful men, and if they found out that Olivia had gone to the authorities, they wouldn't hesitate to retaliate. That night, as Olivia sat alone in her apartment, she couldn't shake the feeling of unease. She had been in dangerous situations before, but this felt different. There was a shadow hanging over her, a sense that something was about to break. She checked her phone repeatedly, expecting another threatening message, but the silence was even more unsettling. The next morning, Olivia returned to GlobalTech with a renewed sense of purpose. She and Liam were careful, acting as though nothing had changed. But Olivia could feel the tension in the air. Grant was unusually quiet during the day's meetings, and Mr. Daniels's gaze lingered on her a little too long. They knew something was up. They just didn't know how close Olivia was to blowing everything wide open. Later that afternoon, Olivia received a cryptic message on her phone from an unknown number. Her breath caught in her throat as she read the words, "Meet me in the parking garage at 7 p.m. I have information you need." Olivia showed the message to Liam, her instincts on high alert. "It could be a trap," she said, her voice low, "or it could be exactly what we've been waiting for." Liam frowned, clearly torn. "It's risky, but if it's real, this could be the final piece we need." Olivia agreed, but her nerves were on edge. She knew this was dangerous, but something told her this was the moment. If they didn't take this chance, they might never get another one. At 7 p.m., Olivia made her way to the parking garage, her heart pounding. Liam was nearby, keeping watch in case something went wrong. As she descended the dimly lit stairwell, every sound echoed ominously. She felt the weight of her decision bearing down on her. This was it. Whatever happened next would determine the outcome of everything they had worked for. In the shadows of the garage, Olivia spotted a figure standing by one of the support columns. She approached cautiously, her hand hovering near her phone, ready to call for help if needed. The figure stepped into the light, a woman, mid-40s, her face lined with worry. Olivia recognized her immediately, Lisa Huxley, the head of operations at GlobalTech. Huxley had been one of the executives Olivia had initially suspected but hadn't found any solid evidence against. What was she doing here? "I don't have much time," Huxley said, her voice shaky, "but I couldn't stay silent any longer. I know what Grant and Daniels have been doing. I've known for months, but I was too afraid to speak up." Olivia felt a surge of adrenaline. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because they're planning to pin everything on you," Huxley said, her eyes wide with fear. "They know you've been investigating theft, and they're going to frame you as the one leaking information. They've already started planting evidence. If you don't get out now, they'll take you down with them." Olivia's mind raced. It all made sense. The revoking of her access, the erasure of her logs, they were setting her up to take the fall. "I have proof," Huxley continued, her voice urgent. "Documents, emails, everything. I was part of it at first, but I realized too late what I was involved in. I'll give you everything, but you have to protect me." Olivia didn't hesitate. "Give me the evidence, and I'll make sure the FBI knows the truth. You're doing the right thing." Huxley handed her a flash drive, her hands trembling. "I hope you can stop them. They're dangerous, Olivia. They won't go down without a fight." As Olivia turned to leave, she felt a weight lift off her shoulders. This was it, the final piece. With Huxley's evidence, there would be no way for Grant and Daniels to cover their tracks. But even as relief washed over her, she knew the danger wasn't over yet. The next few days were a whirlwind. Olivia and Liam handed over the evidence to the FBI, and the wheels of justice began turning. The internal investigation was launched, and the walls began closing in on Grant and his accomplices. But just as Olivia thought they had won, a final twist came, one she hadn't anticipated. Grant, desperate to avoid prison, tried to flee the country. His plan was nearly successful, but thanks to a tip-off from an anonymous source, Huxley, no doubt, the authorities intercepted him at the airport. Daniels, too, was arrested, his smug confidence shattered as the full weight of the law came down on him. In the end, justice was served. Grant, Daniels, and the other corrupt executives were brought to trial, their crimes laid bare for the world to see. The company's reputation was in tatters, and GlobalTech was forced to undergo a complete overhaul. Workplace policies were reevaluated, and the culture of prejudice and corruption that had once thrived within its walls was finally dismantled. For Olivia, the victory was bittersweet. She had exposed the truth and brought justice to those who deserved it, but the cost had been high. The threats, the danger, the constant struggle to be heard, it had taken its toll. But in the end, she had prevailed. She had refused to be silenced, refused to let the system defeat her. Liam, too, had changed. His journey from passive observer to active ally had transformed him in ways he hadn't expected. He was no longer the man who casually dismissed Olivia's insights. He had become someone who understood the importance of standing up for what was right, no matter the cost. As Olivia packed up her desk on her last day at GlobalTech, ready to return to her role at the FBI, Liam stood beside her, his expression thoughtful. "You did it," he said quietly. "We did it," Olivia corrected, smiling at him. "It wasn't just me." Liam smiled back, but there was a sadness in his eyes. "I'll miss working with you." "You'll do fine without me," Olivia said, her voice warm. "Just remember everything you've learned." Liam nodded, his expression serious. "I won't forget." As Olivia walked out of the building for the last time, the weight of the past months lifted from her shoulders. The fight had been long and hard, but she had won. And in the end, justice, like karma, had caught up to those who thought they were untouchable. Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed this story, don't miss the next one. Click on the video now to watch. We appreciate your support, and we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments.